Chapter 4. The Investor. The driver holding the sign with her name on it looked like he'd been hired specifically to make her feel underdressed. Teddi spotted him the moment she cleared customs, standing apart from the crowd of taxi touts and family reunion huggers, with the patient stillness of someone who got paid to wait. Dark suit, crisp white shirt, no tie. The sign said Dr. Varga in elegant black letters on cream cardstock. Not printed, hand-lettered. She approached, shouldering her carry-on. "That's me." The driver, probably executive chauffeur or something equally absurd, gave her a slight nod. "Dr. Varga, welcome to London. Mr. Brennan asked me to convey his apologies for not meeting you personally. He's finishing a call that couldn't be rescheduled." His accent was British, but placed somewhere expensive. "May I take your bag?" "I've got it." If her refusal bothered him, nothing in his face showed it. "The car is this way." The car turned out to be a black Mercedes that probably cost more than her apartment in Lisbon. Teddi slid into the back seat and immediately noticed two things. The leather smelled like money, and someone had left a bottle of sparkling water and a small box of Portuguese pastries on the center console. Pastel de nata. Brennan had done his homework. Or his people had. Same thing, really. She left the pastries untouched and watched London blur past the tinted windows. She'd slept on the plane, sort of. 4 hours of fitful unconsciousness that had left her feeling less like a corpse and more like someone who desperately needed coffee. The week of obsessive analysis had hollowed her out in ways sleep couldn't fully repair. But she'd showered before leaving Lisbon, put on clothes that weren't wrinkled, even applied makeup, which she almost never did, because she knew how this game worked. You don't go to a billionaire looking like a desperate academic, even if that's exactly what you are. The Mercedes glided through neighborhoods that got progressively nicer, the architecture shifting from commercial sprawl to residential wealth, to the kind of understated grandeur that old money preferred. They stopped outside a townhouse in Mayfair that looked like it had been quietly expensive since before the American Revolution. "Mr. Brennan is expecting you in the study," the driver said, holding the door for her. "Second floor, first door on the right." No escort. Interesting. Either Brennan trusted her not to pocket the silverware, or he wanted to see how she handled herself without supervision. The interior of the townhouse was less ostentatious than she'd expected. Good furniture, yes. Art on the walls that probably cost more than most people's houses. But nothing screaming, "Look how rich I am." More like, "Look how much taste I have," which was its own kind of showing off. Teddi climbed the stairs, her carry-on bumping against each step. She found the study door open and paused at the threshold. Niels Brennan stood with his back to her, silhouetted against tall windows that overlooked a private garden. He was speaking into a phone pressed to his ear, his voice carrying the particular rhythm of someone wrapping up a conversation they'd already mentally left. "No, I understand the timeline. I'm telling you the timeline is wrong. Push it back 2 weeks and do it properly, or don't do it at all." A pause. "Because mediocrity is expensive. I'd rather pay for excellence twice than competence once. We'll talk tomorrow." He ended the call and turned, and Teddi got her first real look at the man she was gambling her future on. The photos didn't do him justice, but not in the way that phrase usually meant. Niels Brennan at 53 looked exactly as expensive as his townhouse. Tall, lean, with gray blonde hair that was definitely styled to look carelessly tousled. Blue eyes that held the particular brightness of someone who found the world perpetually amusing. He was wearing jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than her entire outfit, but wore them like they were just clothes. The photos showed the public version. The man in front of her was sharper, more focused, the kind of person who could afford to play the eccentric billionaire because the act gave him room to operate. "Dr. Varga?" He crossed the room in 3 long strides and shook her hand. His grip was firm without being aggressive. "You look better than I expected." "Low bar. After what you described on the phone? Obsessive analysis, minimal sleep, paranoid about surveillance?" His smile was quick and genuine. I expected someone who'd forgotten to eat for a week. You look like you've at least had a sandwich. Two, actually, on the plane. Progress. He gestured toward a seating area near the windows. Leather chairs, a low table, nothing between them that would create barriers. Sit. Tell me what you found. Teddi took the offered chair and set her carry-on at her feet. From the side pocket, she withdrew the encrypted drive, a small thing to hold so much impossibility. Before I show you anything, she said, I need to know something. Ask. Why me? 3 years ago, I was a nobody with a theory that got me blacklisted. You could have found a dozen researchers with better credentials who'd have taken your money and asked fewer questions. Brennan settled into the chair across from her, crossing one leg over the other, with the easy comfort of a man who'd never had to worry about taking up too much space. You're not wrong about the credentials. I've funded plenty of credentialed researchers. Most of them are very good at finding what they already expected to find. He tilted his head slightly. You found something you didn't expect, something that scared you, and instead of burying it, you tried to publish. Which destroyed my career. Which showed me you cared more about the truth than the consequences. His eyes held hers, and for a moment the showman disappeared entirely. That's rare, Dr. Varga. Most people who say they want to know the truth actually just want to be comfortable. You proved you're not most people. Teddi felt something shift in her assessment. He was still performing, probably always was. But there was real intelligence behind the performance. Real conviction. It made him more dangerous, not less. The data, she said. I'll walk you through it. She pulled her laptop from the carry-on and connected the encrypted drive. As the system booted, she gave him the background. The German survey vessel, Aurelio's midnight visit, the week of verification that had consumed her. The source, Brennan said. Can you trust it? Aurelio Pescatori was my doctoral advisor. He's paranoid and he abandoned me when it mattered. But he's not a fraud. She turned the laptop so they could both see the screen. This is the raw sonar data from the German survey, northwest sector of the Azores Plateau, depth around 2,400 meters. The image filled the screen, the lines that shouldn't exist, the geometry that nature didn't make. Brennan leaned forward, his studied casualness evaporating. Whatever mask he wore for the public, genuine interest stripped it away. Those are streets. That's my interpretation. The conservative interpretation is linear formations of unknown origin. But yes, Teddi zoomed in on a section where two lines crossed at something close to a right angle. Streets, or the foundations of streets. The acoustic returns suggest dense material, worked rather than natural. I've compared them to profiles from terrestrial archaeological sites. The closest match is masonry. Masonry, at 2,400 meters depth? The last time this area was above water was during the Younger Dryas, more than 12,000 years ago. Brennan was quiet for a moment, his eyes moving across the screen with an intensity that reminded her uncomfortably of her own obsessive study. Then, what's the extent? How big are we talking? The German survey only captured the edges. They were mapping thermal vents, not looking for this. But based on what we have, she pulled up her analysis files. The grid pattern covers at least 7 square kilometers. Population estimate, using conservative terrestrial analogs, puts it somewhere between 200,000 and 250,000. Athens, Brennan said softly. You're talking about something the size of classical Athens. Larger, possibly, and 7,000 years older than the earliest permanent settlements we know of. He sat back in his chair, but his eyes stayed on the screen. He was silent in a way she recognized. The internal recalibration of someone realizing their mental map had just been redrawn. Show me the central formation, he said. She navigated to the file she'd been avoiding since that first night, the dense acoustic return at the heart of the grid. Whatever this was, it was important. All the main arteries converge here, approximately 400 meters by 300 meters. Multiple levels, or extreme density. The returns are stronger here than anywhere else in the survey zone. A temple, Brennan said, or a palace, or a marketplace, or a government center, or something we don't have a word for because the people who built it vanished before recorded history began. Teddi closed the laptop. I'm a scientist, Mr. Brennan. I deal in data, not speculation. What I can tell you is that this is real. The data is solid, and it changes everything we think we know about human history. Not recorded history, Brennan said. His voice had gone thoughtful, distant. Something that existed before the flood myths, before the ice melted, before we started counting. He focused on her again, and she saw something new in his expression. Hunger. You want to go there. See it for yourself. I need to. The German data is compelling but incomplete. To document this properly, to prove it in a way that can't be dismissed or suppressed, I need primary data, my own instruments, my own eyes. Even though you know people may have died because of this information? Teddi thought about Marta Sousa. 29 years old, single vehicle accident, no witnesses. The warning Aurelio had given her, the paranoia that had seeped into her thinking over the past week. Especially because of that, she said. If this is dangerous enough to kill for, it's important enough to risk dying for. Brennan was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden below. When he spoke, his voice had lost its performance quality entirely. 5 years ago, I funded an expedition to a site in Indonesia. Deep cave system, supposedly undiscovered. The lead researcher found something he couldn't explain. Carvings in a style that didn't match any known culture. He called me, excited, said he was going to document everything and publish. Brennan turned back to face her. 3 days later, the cave collapsed. Equipment failure, they said. Could have happened to anyone. The researcher and 2 of his team didn't make it out. What happened to the data? Lost in the collapse. Conveniently. His smile was thin and bitter. The official inquiry found no evidence of foul play. But I've learned to recognize patterns, Dr. Varga. Some discoveries have guardians, people, organizations, something, invested in making sure certain things stay unfound. You think someone's suppressing this deliberately? I think there are things in this world that powerful people would prefer to keep hidden. I don't know who or why, but I've seen enough to know I'm not being paranoid. He walked back to the seating area, but didn't sit. Which brings us to terms. Teddi had been waiting for this. The hook, the catch. Nothing came free, especially not from billionaires. What do you want? I'll fund the expedition. Ship, equipment, crew. Everything you need to document what's down there. In return, I get first access to any findings before publication. I don't get editorial control. You keep your scientific integrity. I just want to see it first. It was more reasonable than she'd expected, which made her suspicious. That's it? That's the headline. There's one additional condition. Brennan met her eyes, and she saw something careful in his expression. Calculating. I'm sending my own security consultant, someone to watch the operation and report back to me. A spy? Insurance. He didn't flinch from the word. I've lost people before, Dr. Varga. Good researchers doing important work, dead, because I didn't take precautions I should have taken. This time, I'm taking precautions. Who is this person? Someone I trust. That's not an answer. It's the answer you're getting. His tone stayed pleasant, but something behind it had gone flat. His background is classified, genuinely classified, not the kind of classified people use to sound interesting. What I can tell you is that he's spent 20 years in situations that required keeping people alive who didn't want to be kept alive. Teddi felt the first real chill of the conversation. What's his actual brief? Watch the operation, you said. Watch it for what? Threats, interference, the kind of convenient accidents that seem to follow discoveries like yours. Brennan spread his hands, a gesture that was probably meant to look open and probably wasn't. He reports to me. That's his job. And if we disagree? If I want to do something and your consultant says no, then you have a conversation like adults and work it out. That's not how it works with former military types. In my experience, they don't have conversations. They have orders. Brennan's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recalculation. You have final say on the research. He has final say on security. If those two things conflict, you call me and we figure it out together. And if I can't reach you, if we're at depth and something goes wrong, and your man decides the safest thing to do is abort my dive, then he probably has a very good reason. There it was. The thing she'd been probing for. Brennan's consultant wouldn't just be watching. He'd have authority. Real authority, the kind that could shut her down if he decided the risk was too high. The reasonable part of her brain pointed out that this wasn't unreasonable. Brennan had lost people before. He was trying to avoid losing more. And she'd be 2,000 meters underwater in a pressure vessel that could kill her 100 different ways if someone wasn't paying attention to threats she might miss. But another part of her, the part that had spent 5 years being told what she could and couldn't research, bristled at the leash. And if I say no, then I wish you well finding another backer. You might, eventually. Though I suspect the people watching this data won't give you that long. The threat was implicit, but unmistakable. Brennan wasn't just offering funding. He was offering protection. And the price of that protection was accepting his observer. His handler. Whatever the man actually turned out to be. Teddi thought about her options. She could refuse, walk out of this townhouse, and try to find another way. Return to Lisbon and her disaster of an apartment, and the data that was already making her paranoid. Wait for whoever had killed Marta Sousa to decide she was a problem worth solving. Or she could accept the compromise. Take the money, take the consultant, and actually go see what was waiting at the bottom of the Atlantic. With someone watching over her shoulder the entire time, reporting back to a man she'd met an hour ago. Her father's face surfaced again. The morning of his last dive. The easy confidence that had killed him. Maybe having someone whose job was to be paranoid wasn't the worst thing. Maybe. Fine, she said, and the word tasted like a door closing. Your consultant can come, but they don't interfere with the research. They don't have access to my data without my permission. And if they compromise the expedition for reasons that don't involve immediate physical danger, they're off the ship. I don't care whose money is paying for it. Agreed. Brennan's smile returned, warmer now. You're going to like him, I think. Former military, very competent, very discreet. The words were meant to be reassuring. They weren't. Teddi filed away the feeling for later examination and moved on. When do I meet him? Reykjavik. I'm chartering a vessel out of Iceland. Better access to the North Atlantic. Fewer questions about our destination. Brennan pulled out his phone. I'll have my people book your flights. You leave day after tomorrow. It was happening. Actually happening. After 7 days of obsession and 5 years of professional exile, and her whole adult life of wondering what was out there in the deep, she was going to find out. The crew, she said. Who's hiring the crew? You are? With my money and my consultant's input, but ultimately your call. You need people you can trust for something like this. That, at least, felt right. She'd need specialists. A pilot for whatever submersible Brennan could acquire. A geologist, maybe. Someone who could verify her analysis of the formations. Crew who could keep their mouths shut and handle the pressure of discovering something that shouldn't exist. I have a list, she said. People I've worked with before. Some of them might be available on short notice. Send it to my assistant. She'll reach out. Brennan tucked his phone away. Is there anything else you need? From me? Right now? Teddi looked at the drive in her hand. The weight of it seemed heavier than it had in Lisbon. Less like data and more like a key. Just one thing, she said. Why do you do this? Fund expeditions to find things that might get people killed? You have enough money to spend the rest of your life on a yacht somewhere. Why risk it? Brennan was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, short and genuine. Because I read Hamlet when I was 14, he said, and I've never been able to get one line out of my head. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. He caught her expression and laughed. Yes, I know. Every billionaire with unusual interests quotes that line. But clichés become clichés because they're true. His smile shifted, turned inward. I got rich by betting that most people were wrong about most things. Now I spend my money proving it. He walked her to the door himself. The driver materialized to take her to her hotel, a place Brennan had booked for her without asking, because of course he had. The Mercedes whisked her through London streets that were starting to darken toward evening, and Teddi watched the lights come on in windows that held ordinary lives full of ordinary concerns. She thought about the security consultant she hadn't met yet. Former military, very competent, very discreet. The words were meant to be reassuring, but they sat wrong in her chest. She'd be working alongside someone whose loyalty belonged to Brennan, not to her. Someone whose job was to watch. She thought about Brennan's story, the cave in Indonesia, the convenient collapse, guardians of certain discoveries, and she thought about what was waiting at the bottom of the Atlantic, 2,400 meters of darkness, pressure that would crush her like paper if something went wrong. A city older than history, drowned before the first pyramids rose or the first myths were written. Her father had died at 40 meters. Equipment failure, they said. Could have happened to anyone. Some risks you took because the alternative was never knowing. The hotel room was nicer than any place she'd stayed in years. Teddi dropped her bag, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the files on her laptop. Reykjavik. Day after tomorrow. A ship, a crew, a consultant who would be watching her every move. The beginning of something that couldn't be undone. She thought about calling her mother. Thought about calling someone, anyone, just to hear a familiar voice before she stepped off the edge into whatever came next. Instead, she opened the files again. The impossible streets, the drowned grid, the evidence of something that had existed before humans were supposed to be capable of building anything at all. Okay, she said to the empty room. Reykjavik it is. Outside, London hummed its evening song of traffic and voices and lives intersecting without knowing it. And somewhere in a Mayfair townhouse, Niels Brennan was probably already making calls, moving resources, setting wheels in motion that would carry her to the bottom of the Atlantic. She was committed now, for better or worse. The data glowed on her screen, patient and impossible. In a week, maybe less, she'd be on a ship headed for coordinates that held the secret to 12,000 years of forgetting. Teddi closed the laptop, turned off the light, and tried to sleep. The dreams, when they came, held the particular silence of places that had never held air.
This is The Oldest Country. I'm releasing it as serialized audio. If you want to continue, follow or subscribe.